Good morning everyone and welcome to Mountain Harmony Gardening. I'm Kristen and today we're going to be waking up the flower beds. The first thing that we need to do to wake up our flower beds is we need to rake off almost all of the leaves that we put down in fall. And then we are going to cut back everything that has died, like such with the sage. I need to cut that back and I'll show you an up-close view of that. So now it's time to wake up the flower beds. The next task is to trim down all of the grasses and the sage, the herbs in this area. So I'm going to show you how I do that. I know this isn't the best clippers to trim the grass with, but it's what I have for the moment. Alright, so you can see that all of this new green growth is coming up from the grass, and you just want to take off the old growth down to the top of the new grass. And these are all of my decorative grasses that I have growing in here. And you're just cleaning them up a little bit. Now that everything should be out of here, we shouldn't have to worry about any bees or any other beneficial insects nesting in here. Now for my gladiolas, I take them all the way down to the ground because this is not productive anymore and they grow entirely new shoots the next year. Take down this one, and that looks a lot better. Now we're going to move over to my lemon thyme. It smelled amazing while we were raking it out. It smelled so good. And I gave this a pretty drastic haircut last year, so it doesn't need much. Let's see if I get there's grass growing in here too, don't want that. So it doesn't need much, but you can see in this area right here that's kind of died back, and I just go ahead and I trim that off. But because the rest of it looks so good, I'm not going to do anything with it this year. It doesn't really need anything because last year I trimmed it way back really hard, and this year I don't need to. Now for the sage, which I'll move over again. Okay. There's another gladiola. Okay, so we'll want to get a close-up shot of this so I can show you guys really good what I'm doing. All the tips here look like they're growing, and they are, but if you really want to get some good growth out of your sage, you actually want to take it down pretty far. So I took off all of this up here that wasn't being productive other than the tip, and I took it back to right here where there is some new growth a little bit larger than these small ones. So you're just trimming it back. And I know this one looks pretty good, but I've done this every year where I go ahead and I just take them back. Like this one is a perfect example because it looks like a little bush still. And you can just kind of go down to all this new growth. And this is how far I trim it back every year. And it grows this much growth every single summer. So it's really worth it to keep your sage pruned up really well. There, just a few more. And you can see as I'm doing this, how much better it looks already. Taking off everything that kind of died back over winter. And it smells really good too. So a few more. And you can do this with other herbs too. If you see that they've died back on top from winter time, go ahead and just trim them back to the next new growth. And see how much better that looks already just by taking all of this out. And if any of it, like this one, is died back completely, just go ahead and take it back down to the ground, and that's okay. Like this one's really died back, and you can kind of see that. So you go ahead and take that all off. And clean these up quite a bit. All right, just a little bit more to go here, and then we will move on to the lavender plant, which last year I trimmed it back way far back, and it came back really good this last summer, but this summer I won't need to trim it back quite as much, or I should say this spring. Okay. And there we go. And all of this over here is from the lilac, or not lilac, lavender. There we go. And it's all trimmed up, and you can kind of remove any of the dead leaves in there, or any of the leaves from fall that are still kind of stuck in there, just to give it plenty of room to regrow the new leaves. There, and that's how I trim up my sage. Now we're going to be moving on to the lavender. And you'll see that some of the lavender, like right here, that has completely died back from last year, and you want to go ahead and trim that off all the way to the base, because there's no growth on that. You want to make room, you can see here, you want to make room for all of the new growth that you're going to get this spring. And then all the lavender flowers that are left on here, you want to trim those off. And kind of clean it up the same way that you clean up the sage. And then next, after I get this all done, we will be talking about, oh, Lola's watching. We'll be talking about the honeysuckle. My next task in the Japanese garden is to prune up my honeysuckle. And I leave the leaves on here during the winter time because they're much easier to take off during the spring. Just kind of crunch off all the dead leaves. Go through one area, knock them all off. And then I can see what's dead. So if you take a close look here, you don't want to trim off any of the new growth, but you can see this is all dead. So we want to take this off and that off. And then any of these other ones that are not producing new leaves. And you want to look really closely for small buds, but a lot of the times there aren't any on the ends. And you just keep trimming all of that dead off. Now, for my clematis, I kind of do the same thing. I try to remove some of the dead leaves, just so I can tell where the new growth is and where any of the dead growth is. Like this whole section here, I've come to an end, is all dead. So I want to trace it all the way back and take it all the way off. So I do this for both of these plants. And then my last bit of herbs that I need to trim up is the oregano here. And you can see that there's a whole bunch of dead sticks sticking up. You just want to prune those off all the way to the ground. And I've been debating whether I take this out completely, because I wasn't planning for it to grow in my Japanese garden, but I kind of like how it looks, so I think I'm going to leave it. In just an hour's worth of work, we made a lot of progress. As you can see, we raked up most of the leaves. We left a few because they do make good mulch. We trimmed up all the grasses. And take a look at this. This looks so much better, and so does the lavender plant. It looks nice and healthy now. And then Donnie and I trimmed up the honeysuckle. Donnie got all the hard parts, well, high parts. They're hard for me because I can't reach them. And I got all the low parts. And then cleaned up the clematis as best we could. This plant gets pretty intertangled, so I can only trim a little bit of it because sometimes you end up trimming off a whole entire stem. You don't want to do that. And then we cleaned up this whole entire bed. We removed most of the leaves. We trimmed up any of the grasses that needed to be cut back. We trimmed up the double flowering, oh, this is not the double flowering almond. Dwarf weeping crabapple. The double flowering almonds in bloom, that's why I'm thinking about it. And then there's some chives down there. We got some grasses trimmed up. And then the iris looked great. And the goji berry that is with the clematis is growing really good this year. I am so excited. I'm hoping that this gets a chance to take off really good and grow up the trellis before it gets too shady over here. So this area, I think in general, looks pretty good. Now it's time to move on to the rest of the garden. In another video, I'm going to be showing you how we set up this whole entire new flower bed that we're doing underneath the trellis. But for right now, we need to rake all the leaves off of here. And then we're going to go all the way down. We're going to leave these ones because we really don't need to do much underneath the raspberries. And you can see we've already got a lot of raspberries coming up since we filmed the other video. And even though up to here is going to be the new flower bed, we will rake off the leaves here because this is my shady garden bed and I want to make sure that everything that's starting to come up here has plenty of sunlight. And you can see the cleavers in a short amount of time I've already poked through. Normally I've removed all the leaves by now, but with all the projects that we've been doing, plus we just got back from camping, so that was really fun. We've been a little bit delayed on this, but it's okay. You can see they're still growing. So we're going to remove all of this. And then the front of the yard is what is probably the most spectacular this time of year because everything is blooming, from my tulips to my grape hyacinths, my forsythia, the double flowering almond. Isn't that pretty? When it's in full bloom, it is just absolutely spectacular. And even the bleeding hearts. This one is blooming, a pretty white one. And then the other standard bleeding heart is blooming too. And we've got lots more tulip buds coming. So now we're going to do a quick time lapse of cleaning up these beds and show you what they look like afterwards. Now that we've finished raking out all the leaves out of the flower beds, I need to go ahead and take down my comfrey. And these leaves I'm going to be putting over here with the rest of these leaves because this is becoming the new flower bed. So I don't actually need to remove these leaves. I'm just removing them off the lawn. So comfrey leaves, very good fertilizer. And then the other thing that I'm going to be doing is in the other corner, we overwintered or tried to overwinter some honeysuckles and to see what would happen. And I'll also be cutting those down too. I also forgot to mention that any of the raspberries, like all of these here, since they are not inside of the trellis, I will be cutting those out because I want to grow more comfrey in this area. Well, it's been a few hours worth of work for Donnie and I think most of that is moving the camera around and filming. So we cleaned up this bed and we left a lot of the mulch because these are my flower beds. I don't put as much extra mulch on them like I do my garden bed. And I left all the leaves for the new bed that's going to be coming in here pretty soon that we'll be filming. And I got my ground cover cleaned up. And I plan on putting hollyhocks in here because hollyhocks are invasive. And I want them to be because not a whole lot grows here. So I want to try to get a couple of things that are growing here that just keep coming back and back and back, kind of with a vengeance, But I want some height, and the hollyhocks will definitely do that. And now, for the front of the bed, you can see that we didn't do a whole lot of cleaning up. I took out the tomato cage and the huckleberries that were there. I don't see anything growing back, but we'll see what happens. And then all of this is cleaned up just a little bit. And over here, and I had to do all this by hand because my plants were so close together that I didn't want to damage any of them because some of these are really delicate. But that's all it takes to clean up your yard and get all of this ready for spring, which this already looks like spring up here. I hope all of you are having a wonderful spring and you're waking up your flower beds. I am so excited to see all the new growth and all the new blooms that we're getting. We also found out that one of our irises that we transplanted last year has got a bloom on it this year. I wasn't expecting that. I thought maybe next year we would get blooms on all the ones that we dug up and divided and transplanted. But it's a wonderful surprise. So we've got quite a few projects coming up, like I'll be showing you how to put in that new flower bed over by the trellis and moving the long bed trellis, which will be a huge project in and of itself, but those are some things that you guys can look forward to. So thanks for watching, everyone. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment. All those things really help my channel grow, and I love to see more people join our community. So happy gardening, everyone.